Hello, I'm Susannah and I run the Good Property Company, as well as this YouTube channel giving you loads of advice, knowledge, experience and the occasional cock up on property. I've also got a great education website for you called thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk, and there you're going to find downloadable education material, great courses, links to webinars and free downloads for you as well, and also my superb academies, which are 60-day academies guiding you and moving you forward in finding deals, in working with investors, in flipping property and being a property investor. So hop on over there at some point. So today I got asked, Susannah, how did you find your very first investor? I guess like most of us, I got into property thinking that it would all be about finding deals and working with builders, And like many of us, I quickly realized that property was going to suck almost all, more than I had before paying me out. It's like that delayed gratification writ large. You are building major assets, maybe on paper. I mean, I was a multi-millionaire on paper with not a bean in the bank. So it sucks your cash flow in the early days, but you're building these big assets which eventually are going to pay you back. But in the meantime, you've kind of got to feed them with cash until they start paying you back, okay? Before, you'll cash for the refurb, the deposit, the fees, the interest cost, the survey cost, everything is up to you first that you've got to pay before the big machine starts cranking out and paying you back. And of course, if you're in your build stage, as soon as that first house starts paying you back, guess what? You kind of nick all its money to go and buy the next house. So even though you've in theory got these houses that are making profit, what you're doing is you're using all that cash to buy more assets, because you know that in the long run, rich dad, poor dad, you want to move from having a day job to being self-employed, to building a business, to eventually chilling out beside the sea. I live here in Barcelona. I also live in Bristol. I live in two places. I live 9 minutes away from here. It's gorgeous. And that being an investor with an asset base which pays out. But that move from day job to chilling out beside the sea and your income coming in has a bit of a cash flow glitch in the middle of it if you're not starting out with all the cash that you need to buy all the properties that you want, which is kind of 99.9% of us all. So how do you do it? You do it with investment. How do you get to build your property portfolio with private investment? And if you don't personally have the investment, as most of us don't, sooner than you realize you're going to need or want to turn to investors, because if you don't do that, you're going to have to stop, because your money stops and then you just sit there like a pudding going, I'd love to buy more property but I haven't got any money. I know now how to buy discounted deals so I can pay people back. I know how to do flips, I can pay people back, but I can't get started. So you have to get over that hump of feeling uncomfortable working with investors. Now, as somebody who's raised millions and millions of pounds on private investment and paid back every penny to them, investment from private investors is something that I found was really sensible to do in the medium term. So short term is kind of like 1 year for me. Medium term for me is 3 to 5 years. And longer term, I don't want to have any private investors because I don't want to be paying interest. But in the medium term, as I got over that great big, oh my goodness, how do I go from not having enough money, building a big property base, which is sucking up cash, to phew, everybody's paid back, I'm sitting beside the beach, private investment. No, I said I paid it all back. I am definitely a fan of working with investors, but with the end goal of paying it back. So I don't want you to continue to borrow money, but on the never. You borrow, you pay back, you borrow, you pay back, you borrow, you pay back, you get a good habit in the go. So how did I get my first investor? Well, I was stuck and I had my back against the wall. We Brits are not culturally comfortable with asking for money, and I am definitely part of that gang. I didn't want to go out and ask people for money, and I bet you think property, like I did, was working with builders and finding deals. I'll just get mortgages. Yeah. Well, I ran out of money. I was very uncomfortable, and often you need to have your back against the wall for you to go and get your first investor, because the discomfort of having your back against the wall is more uncomfortable than the comfort of actually asking somebody, would you like to fund me? I keep notes, guys, because I want to make sure I've got everything in my video for you. And I think it often helps if you're faced with a worse situation oh my goodness, I'm going to lose this house, or I'm going to lose my deposit at auction, then you're like, okay, I'll get going and face an uncomfortable situation. I don't like picking up the phone and asking people to borrow money. So that was my situation. I had agreed a property at auction and exchanged, because when you buy a property at auction, you exchange 10%. You are legally bound to buy that property. I actually applied for a mortgage, which was a bit silly. You always want to do bridging at auction, but I was new to property. My funding didn't come through in time. Can you imagine the panic, fear, and just general, I have bought a property at auction, I have 28 days to complete, then they give you notice and you've got another 2 weeks, and then that's it. They take your deposit, they keep your 10%, and if they sell it for less, you are liable for the difference. And it was becoming quite clear kind of 3 weeks into the process that I needed to buy this property next week, and the funding hadn't come through. So back totally against the wall. So heart sinking, I picked up the phone and I started calling every single business card I had collected, having gone to quite a lot of property meets and having collected business cards. I got my lawyer to draft up loan documents, and you can actually download them from my website, so you don't need to pay your lawyer the serious amount of money that I paid. So I'd have something to show private investors that I was serious and I was professional. I also drafted up a marketing brochure, very simple. Again, it's part of the package for raising private finance. You can download it from my website. You can copy it, I don't mind at all. So that people could see that there was plenty of profit in the deal. I ended up, and I did not enjoy picking up the phone, but I would have not enjoyed worse, no, that's not quite English, not getting the property, having my 10% being retained and being stopped in my tracks, never being able to proceed as a property investor. I wasn't intending on sticking in my day job. So I ended up borrowing the money to buy the property from one investor and the money to renovate the property from another investor. So there wasn't any bank funding involved in actually buying and renovating the property. So I avoided bridging and I went straight to refinancing out once I'd renovated the property onto a mortgage. So let me repeat that. I borrowed the money to buy the property from one investor and the smaller amount of money to renovate the property from another investor. So it was all private investors. One had first charge, the big money, and one had, it was an RX1, so the smaller money. Now I'm paying interest. And of course I paid too much interest, and I absolutely wince at how much interest I paid. I hate seeing when people are paying 1% a month, 12% a year. When people are getting like nothing in the bank, you can pay like much cheaper than that. But at the time my back was against the wall, so I ended up paying like 1% a month, 12% a year. Oh, don't do that. To give you a clue, every year as I got older, more experienced, I dropped down the interest I paid my investors. So I started at 12%. Don't do that, it's far too expensive. The following year I'd go down to 10, then down to 8, then down to 6, then down to 4. I ended up at 2%, people. Don't ask, don't get. So do not think that just because you've seen other people stand up at property events and say they pay 1% a month, 12% a year, that you should offer that interest. It's shudder value. With such a high interest rate, and what I did is I rolled up the cost, because of course I had no money to pay the interest until I got it refinanced back out. I rolled it up and paid it at the end to help my cash flow. I was super interested in getting that refurb done so I could get a mortgage, so I could pay back that investor for the actual property and this investor for the renovation costs. Oh my goodness, was I ever pushing that renovation along. So once it was close to finishing, I chose the right buy-to-let mortgage and I got them out. I paid the valuation fee, I got agreement in principle, and I pushed the conveyancing along super fast to pay off investor one and investor two. 2 lessons for me, which I can now share with you. Number 1, being forced to go to private investors, which was super uncomfortable, just shows me how many people there are who are willing to lend money. Because what ended up happening is I ended up finding a load of people who wanted to invest with me now, and then a load of people who said, do you know what, Suze, I'd love to work with you, I'll invest with you later, so call me on the next deal. So it didn't just, that back against the wall position didn't just give me one investor, it gave me like a bunch of people for now and a bunch of people for later. And of course later on I was like phoning them up and getting them to invest in other deals. So I'm like, oh my word, it opened up a whole new world to me. And then keeping property long term is where their wealth is. That deal was bought for less than £100,000. It is now worth £250,000. What did I do? I rented it out, made profit for the last 10 to 15 years, and it also went up by 150 grand. It went up by 2.5 times in just under 15 years. So amazing, isn't it? So that in itself, that kind of excitement, that opportunity, I hope will persuade you to step over the discomfort we feel about looking to borrow private finance, looking to work with private investors, and think, I'm going to take this uncomfortable feeling of asking people, as long as I'm sure I can pay them back, because I want you buying property, and private investors are the way forward. That's the plan. So back against the wall shows you how many investors are out there, because you don't stop making phone calls until you've uncovered a whole load of people. And the people that you uncover now, they'll fund this one, but then people who say, call me back in 2 weeks, and you're like, great, I need to buy this property now, but I'll call you in 2 to 4 weeks time. They'll buy the next one and the next one and the next one for you. And the capital growth that was bought for less than £100,000, it was bought for £92,500. It is now worth £250,000 less than 15 years later. So let that be a huge encouragement for you to get going and picking up the phone and getting over that initial discomfort before you realise there are loads of people out there who'd lend you money because you're good at finding deals. I've got other videos on finding investors. I've got other videos on finding discounted deals in order to be able to kind of pin the investors round that, if you like. But this is, how did I find my first investor? And the answer is desperation, isn't it? So like, subscribe. I don't want you missing out for any videos. And what I'm going to do here somewhere in this video is I'm going to pop you some links for you to download some free documents all about property and all about your property learning. And I'd love to see you hop over to my website at some point, because I've got some great education on there for you guys. It's called thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. and it's well worth having a good gander. But in the meantime, wherever it is, download all of the free links and enjoy the YouTube channel. But most importantly, take action and go for it in property. I wish you every success. Critical question and a free checklist over here: how to figure out what price to offer in a property deal. I have a checklist written for you. Tick it off, get the job done. Download it